When the AFL announced its Team of the Century in September 1996, no one was surprised that Carlton provided the fullback. Stephen Silvagni got the nod, yet the football world was equally divided on whether Silvagni or his predecessor at the Blues, Geoff Southby, should have won the role. Welcome, Geoff. Were you unlucky? Were you disappointed?
Thanks, Mike. Nice to be here. But look, no, I wasn't really disappointed. It would have been lovely to have been selected in that famous team. But I had a great time, a hell of a lot of time for Stephen Silvagni and his career as a footballer, magnificent footballer, brilliant at full-back as well as up forward at times too. So, but yeah, look, I was always taught to enjoy other people's success, and I felt really good for him at the time. And whilst a little disappointed that I didn't get it, but I probably thought that David Dench might have got it. I think.
Yeah. Well, I share that same affection for Dench as you had. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a brilliant player, wasn't he?
Brilliant player, Dench. Yeah.
Just that, and you played a little bit like him in terms of that purity of sort of see ball, go for ball. Yeah. And you both love running out of the back line. Yeah,
I think we both had a bit of that boldness about us to try and make the fullback position a bit more exciting than what it could be, because you could get locked up in defence and be very negative all the time and punching away, and that tends to eat you up a little bit after a while. So the positive stuff and setting plays into attack and all that sort of thing was always part of my armoury, I think. Yeah.
Interesting contrast with you and Silvagni, although you both won 2 premierships and you both won 2 BNFs, yet he was more the physical player, concentrating on nullifying the opponent. You like to sort of just attack the footy and then take off. I'm amazed at how many times when I'm watching replays of your old stuff about how often you ran out of the back line bouncing the footy. Yeah,
well, I sort of always felt that I wanted to do something on the attacking side, and in my early days, particularly when I had the speed to be able to, and particularly the initial speed to get away, I could always get a bounce or two in, and it always felt good. And if you could use the ball and kick it over the lines and that sort of thing and help get your team into attack, it was always very, very helpful. But really my main focus was always on that kicking, always at stopping a full forward from kicking goals and the defensive side of it. And so there was always that was the main element of my game. But as I said, whenever I had a goal kicked on me, it was like having a knife in my back. It was,
was it really?
I used to hate having a goal kicked on me. So it's
that's competitive spirit,
competitiveness. Yeah, it's more about the hate to lose factor rather than the absolute will to win factor. I reckon the hate to lose factor is the real key to a high quality output in football, basically. Yeah.
Geez, you played on some big names, didn't you?
Yeah.
Wade, McKenna, Beasley, Templeton.
Yeah, look, Doug Wade in my first season, Peter Hudson, Doug Wade, Peter McKenna, fantastic footballers, magnificent full forwards, and their records all show that Doug Wade was made me look silly at Princess Park very early in my career. Kicked 8 goals on me, and that was a good lesson for me. Wow. That day. It was 8 knives in my back, and I vowed declared I wasn't going to have another 8 kicked on me. But that didn't happen until 1979 when Calvin Templeton kicked 9 on me out at Western Oval, and that was a nasty day for me. And we got beaten quite convincingly that day. And Jezza was the coach, and we all paid for it dearly on the next Tuesday night with no footballs all running. So, and of course, my teammates at the time weren't all that happy with me letting Templeton kick 9 goals on me for that day. But,
so when that happened, you talked about Wade and Templeton kicking bags. They left you at fullback, didn't they? You were the fullback and you stayed there.
Yeah, I think the thinking at the time was that, that they had enough faith in you to say, look, you can lift your game. And particularly in the early 70s up until the late 70s, I think there were times that if you lost your way a little bit towards the end of my career, back in the late 70s into the early 80s, then the coaches were then more inclined to move you. And I spent a bit of time up the half-back flank, occasionally because I was being, maybe wasn't going as well as I should have at fullback.
A dream start for you. You come down from Bendigo, you win best and fairest in your first 2 years, represent Victoria in your first year, and win a premiership in your second year.
Yeah, look, it was a good start to my career. There's no doubt about that, and it was probably a little bit. I got a bit ahead of myself, I think, because I was thinking at the end of '72, or particularly after that grand final win, and how we were all in the zone that day. It was just a magnificent day for Carlton when we beat the Tigers and kicked 28-9, I don't know whether that record will be knocked over for a while. I certainly won't for the way the footy's played these days. But yeah, after that, at 72, after winning that Premiership and being best and fairest for the second year in a row, my first 2 seasons, I was thinking this game's a bit too easy, or it's easy, you know, and thinking, oh yeah, and there'll be another Premiership probably coming up, because that's what you play footy for, is the Premiership thing and the team thing, and we battled away. There was a lot of wasted years, we believe, at Carlton at that size, because we always had good teams, and we were in the finals most years up until 1979. It took till 79 until we had another one and beating Collingwood in that tough, hard game in 1979.
Geoffrey, my memory is that you were selected to represent Victoria, I think, after about 8 games in 1971. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, my first season, that's right.
Yeah.
It was very early in the season, I know that, when the first interstate game, the Big V, were playing over in the West, yeah.
Yeah. Any other debutants with you?
Well, yeah, I think it was a pretty special time, because I believe that Keith Gregg and Peter Knights, I think, were also selected in that same team, and all played their first games in 1971. So yeah, it was a pretty special time to have 3 youngsters in the team, and we went to Perth and won the game. And I think a highlight for me over there at the time was it was Polly Farmer's last game for WA. He'd come back from Victoria, obviously a few years earlier, and what an iconic footballer he was, and to be able to play in the same game as Polly Farmer, it was a very special time.
Geoff, I know it's reopening an old wound, but I want to take you back to Grand Final Day 1973 and that infamous clash between G. Southby and N. Barm. Let's have a look at how Barmy saw it, sitting in that chair 2 or 3 years ago. Now, in today's terminology, in the 73 Grand Final, you virtually assaulted Southby.
Oh, very, very reckless. In the nicest way, you could call it reckless.
Yeah.
No, I agree. But fortunately, I think Lee Matthews said it well once when he said, look, that was then, this is now. It's very hard to impose the standards of one day on another.
I accept that.
That's me making an apology.
No, but it seems like I've talked to you about this briefly before in casual conversation. It's as if you sort of say, well, that was then, I'm not proud of it, but it doesn't haunt me.
No, that's true. Yeah, it doesn't haunt me.
What did you think of that explanation, Geoff?
Oh, look, I've got a lot of time for Neil Barm, what he's done in football, and particularly off the field. And look, at the time, I was incredibly disappointed that I'd get knocked out of a grand final like that. And obviously, you know, there'd be something wrong if you weren't disappointed about that, because I know the doctor came out to me and said, you know, what's your name? And I said, give us a clue, I think I said. So I think he said, no, I think you better come off, son. So, and I wasn't able to play again for that game, and it had a bit of an impact on me, certainly I had concussion, and took a while for me to get my confidence back, I think, another year or so. And but Neil's, I mean, what he's done off the field, I've got a lot of admiration for him, and for me, time goes on, and I've always been taught that you've got to move on with life. And
have you crossed paths with Barmy to the point
we have.
You can sit down and talk about that? We
have. We haven't gone into real discussions, just more a bit of a chit-chat, running into each other, and in interviews where he's been on a panel and that side. So, but, you know, like, you know, he certainly mentioned there was an apology there, so which was nice for me to hear, and that sort of stuff.
Has he apologised to you face to face?
No, not at this stage, not directly, but he's certainly getting the message through, I think, through the media, I think, that sort of stuff. But it doesn't particularly worry me these days. I just move on with my life. And
but it worries some of your teammates.
Oh, yeah. Some of my teammates, family are still worried about it, all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, but that's nice that, you know, your teammates are concerned about things like that, and your family and all that sort of stuff. But
one of your good mates, David Mackay, was playing in that game. In The Age on the following Monday, he was quoted as saying that what he saw in the second quarter of the grand final, your incident, made him sick. Pretty powerful stuff.
Powerful stuff, yeah. Well, it was a fairly nasty knock, I think, when you look at it. But Swan was also hit pretty hard by Barm in 1972 grand final as well. That wasn't as documented as much as this one, but yeah, and had a broken jaw, but played out the game. Amazing effort by Swan. Played out the game with a broken jaw, and so he wasn't a big fan of Barmy after that. There's no doubt about that. And you can understand why he said those things at the after the '73 grand final.
Was your jaw cracked in that incident?
No, I didn't.
So you had a heavy bout of concussion?
Heavy bout of concussion, so I didn't have any bone damage.
Now, Ian Robinson was the umpire, grand final day '73. No free kick and no report. Have you ever crossed paths with Robbo?
Yeah, well, actually, the first time I crossed paths with him after that grand final was probably a couple of weeks after, and I was just recovering from a fairly severe bout of concussion, and we were at some function, I think, and he happened to be there, and he did make the effort to come up to me, and he said, look, Geoff, he said, I've seen that, and he said, I really should have reported Barmy for that. And so that was sort of comforting for me at the time.
There's a popular theory, Geoff, that incident set you back for a considerable period. You'd won 2 best and fairest and had a very good year in '73. You didn't finish top 3 in the best and fairest at Carlton again until 1979.
Yeah, I was in the top 5 or 6, I think, the following year, but it was a year that was a bit difficult. Your confidence gets knocked about a bit. Plus, I was also, at that stage, I'd just got married at the end of 1973. My life was changing. I started a teaching career early in 1974, so there were other factors coming into my life that had some sort of impact on probably my football. In my first couple of years, I was pretty much absolutely focused, and then it changes a little bit when your life changes like that. So that was another factor that could have caused a little bit of drop in the form, but I loved the game, and I was determined to get back to sort of the levels that I was playing in the first couple of years, and I probably nearly got there, I think. Yeah.
Well, I thought '79, certainly in statistical terms, was probably as good as you'd had.
Yeah, '79 was good. I had a very consistent year, and it was a great year, and we won a premiership, and there was some
you played every game.
Played every game. Yep. Fantastic players in the team that year, with Dool and Ashman and Mackay and McClure. We had great team going on in '79, and we were very focused and fit with Jezza as the coach.
I want to ask you about the Jezza regime. Yeah. The simple view from the outside is that every time you had a poor performance, not you, the team, that Jezza said, well, you'll pay for it on the training track on Monday or Tuesday.
Yes. We were scared to lose really a bit. Jezza had instilled that into us. He had this situation where if you lost, the training session on the Monday was incredibly severe amount of running basically, but we were very fit, and we came into the finals because we still loved Jezza because he was Jezza and he was our mate, that sort of thing. He had to change, and a lot of us understood that he had to come up with some sort of a technique to have the difference between him as the teammate and him as the coach. And I think he did that really well, and hence we ended up playing some pretty good football, and we were tough enough and fit enough and probably talented enough to win that premiership in a real tough game against Collingwood in '79.
You lost 2 games that year, didn't you?
Yeah, not too many.
Was that the best team you played in with the Blues?
Oh, look, I would have thought '72 was nearly as good. We had a great year in '72, even though Richmond was giving us a hard time for most of that year. We did knock them over in the big one. But yeah, '72, '79 were very, very good, and then '81, '82 were pretty good too, with the influx of the youngsters. And,
interesting,
and the larrikins and all those.
Yes, the larrikins and the legends. The subject of a recent book by Dan Eddy, which is a very good book actually.
Yeah, good book. Yeah.
You missed both of those premierships in '81, '82.
'81, '82, yeah.
How deeply does that burn?
It hurts. Nothing worse than an injured footballer when you can't play, and I was probably good enough to be in both of those grand final sides. I was on vice captain of the team one of those years, I think, and played for most of the year. '81, I did do my back early in the year, and it took me a while to get back into it. I had a pretty severe back injury, but I got back in and played most of the last second half of the season, albeit with a back brace and all that sort of stuff. But I was getting myself around reasonably well, and. But I had the last session of training before the grand final, I ripped my groin. It was sort of back related, and ripped my groin, and it was right towards the end of that session, and I had to go, and then Well, I was thinking to myself, will I tell the coach? Will I tell, you know, this is not good? And I'm thinking, will I be okay? You know, but I said, well, I got to think about what goes on here. You know, it's not you as the team thing, all those sort of things. So I finally made came clean and said, look, I've done my groin. They said, well, we better do a fitness test the next morning prior to the game, and I failed that fitness test. And the following year I was motoring along reasonably well, and I think it was one of the qualifying finals that I twanged a hamstring. So you twang a hamstring, it's got to be about 4 weeks. It was only 2 weeks before the grand final.
Yeah.
So that was the story of not being able to play in 2 grand finals. It's painful.
I bet it is, because I mean the blokes that your mates like Jones, Johnson,
Swanee Mackay, yeah, we'll play 4. Yeah.
4 Flags, all of them.
Yep. Yeah, I played in 2, so I was so lucky to play in the 2. So that's the way I look at it. And well, I played in 2, and then only lasted half in the '73 one, which we lost, and then 2 with injury. And you celebrate with the boys, but it's not the same.
No, it's not. When you were in the latter stages of your career, the view in the media circle certainly was that Carlton was saying you were having either back injuries or hamstring injuries, and they were a cover for depression. Is that true?
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, look, I suppose the first event, or the first bout of severe depression I had was at the end of 1979. We played in won a Premiership, 79, magnificent, you know, feeling to be able to win a Premiership. I was only able to celebrate the night after that Premiership. The next day and the following 2 or 3 months, I went into deep depression and severe depression, and I had to go through lots of treatment, and finally got myself back on track after taking some medication and getting a lot of counselling and meeting with psychiatrists and all that sort of stuff. But it was all, at the time when it was all hush-hush, and at this stage it was all kept very much under the closet or in the closet, and it was part of that stigma of depression at the time, and it wasn't much fun, I can tell you, because you were sort of living a bit of a life of sort of, oh, well, yeah, and everyone's saying, how's the back, or how you feeling?
Yeah,
and I said, so not too many really knew. But managed to get myself back on track, and probably missed about 5 or 6 games the next year in 1980, and then had a very good year, actually. I think I ended up second in the best and fairest, and ended up playing for Victoria, and so I got myself back on track really well, and was feeling, you know, really good about myself. My self-esteem had come back, all that sort of stuff. But then the following 2 years I was up and down, 82, you know, 81, 82, you know, struggling a bit, 83. I had a couple of pretty severe bouts during the season, but I hung in there, sort of thing. And then in the 84 season, I started off the season in pretty good shape, pretty good mentally at the stage, but all of a sudden I had this crash, and I fell into deep depression again, and ended up in the Melbourne clinic for 7 days. And I know at the time the media weren't, you know, it was hush-hush. It's an ugly time of my life when I think back, because it's bad enough being depressed, but and you don't really want to talk about it yourself, but it wasn't out there, you know, that sort of stuff. But it was an ugly time, and those 7 days that I had in the Melbourne clinic was incredible experience, something that you'd never like to go through again. I spent after I retired, I spent the next 10 years or so up and down a bit, but still coping with life reasonably. Then I had a pretty good time for the next 10 years until my late 40s, and then I had this huge crash again. I ended up having 4 weeks in the Melbourne clinic. And I wasn't sure whether I was ever going to get out of there. That was the state that I was in. Thank God that, you know, I had great support from all my friends, and particularly my family, my wife and Lorraine and family and all that sort of stuff, but managed to hang in there, and then medication sort of kicked in, and all of a sudden I recovered pretty well, and quite well, and I haven't, touch wood, I've been very good since, pretty much. Yeah.
Was the depression set off by an event, or do you think it was genetic?
There's a bit of genetic in it. My dad had depression, so I think there certainly is. My brother, one of my eldest brothers, got bipolar, who suffers, and one of my eldest sisters suffers from depression. Some of my cousins and relatives in the next generation are suffering a bit, so there's a genetic connection. And I reckon in 1979, what triggered it, I think I was teaching high school HSC, teaching physics and maths and stuff like that.
That'd depress me.
Yeah, as I said, I was only about 3 weeks in front of those kids, I reckon, with physics. Physics was always a challenge for me, but I was teaching it anyway, and that was a big year just as a teacher. And then we had this incredibly difficult year with Jezza as the coach, who really ran us. And we trained extremely hard that year, the hardest we've ever trained, or the hardest I've ever trained. And I reckon by the time the 79 Premiership was over, I was just mentally and physically stuffed. So, and that sort of triggered the press. And it was a long road back, because maybe it's a long road up into that state throughout your career, because the pressure of footy is always there. And
I admire the fact that you're prepared to talk about it, but that's a quick change, isn't it? I mean, we were the industry used to sort of push it aside and not talk about it when you were playing.
Yeah, well, not only the industry, it was just right across the board, basically. And I think you've got to give great credit to someone like Jeff Kennett for his initiative with Beyond Blue and the other similar initiatives that happen interstate with the Black Dog Institute and all those sort of things. It's incredible now that you can able to come out and be confident and feel comfortable about talking about it, and I find it quite therapeutic to actually talk about it. It's good for me when I do that sort of thing. So.
When you were in the grip of it, when you were playing, how did it manifest itself? I mean,
well, your mind can't work for a start, so your decision making is, and you're numb to emotions, all those sorts of things. So it's a horrible, particularly if you're in severe depression. And there were times that where I wanted to go off and do all that sort of stuff. So
really,
oh yeah, it got to that stage. So it was pretty.
You were talking to me with that gesture. I take it, mean you were suicidal.
Suicidal, yeah. So not much fun when that happens, I can tell you, and it's a nasty thing. I know at the end of '84, when after I'd been in hospital, I wanted to try and get myself back and play a bit of footy. I thought that might be good for me, and I know that my last 7 or 8, I didn't play in the seniors, I played in the twos, and it was like getting up and climbing Mount Everest every Saturday to continue on trying to play a game of footy. And by the end of that, I said, well, I think I've given it my best shot, and time to move on and retire, basically. That was the end of '84. Yeah.
Were you able to confide in people at the footy club?
Only my closest mates, probably, and the doctors, obviously, and the coach, basically. So, yeah, they were very good. The Carlton handled it as well and as professionally as they could have at the time. There was no doubt about that.
But would you have been better off if it had been a public issue and
Probably.
People were aware?
Very much so, I think, yeah.
Which
is happening today.
Correct.
I think, yeah.
And when you see things like Alex Fasolo and Travis Cloke and others, clearly you'd empathise.
Oh, yeah, I can empathise with them, and it's good that they've been able to sort of maybe nip it into the bud a little bit this way, whereas mine sort of just dragged on, and you didn't really want to, expose the problem you had and all those sorts of things because of the stigma around it all. Yeah.
Jeffrey, at one point in your career, I think mid-70s, you wanted to go to South Melbourne, correct?
Yep, that's right.
Why so?
Why so? I was approached by South Melbourne at the time. I'd played about 120 games or something with Carlton at the time, and I'd played at the one position, full-back. It's only natural at times that you're looking for a bit of a change, and at that stage, I think it was Ian Stewart was coaching, and I think I used to have a few chats with Stewie after the game when we were playing against him down at the Lakeside Oval and having a beer after the game, that sort of stuff, and I think out of those chats, Stewie sort of organised for an approach basically to me, and I thought, well, let's explore this, and I decided that I would like to have a change. What happened is that they went to Carlton and wanted to clear me, but in those days Carlton said no, and there was a situation where you could threaten legal action and all that sort of stuff, which we went down that path. I wanted to move genuinely at the time. I wanted to.
Why though? Why would you leave a powerhouse club like Carlton to go to the south?
Yeah, I needed a change. Basically, that was the reason.
Change of environment.
Change of environment. Like, I do recruitment in my business world, and people want to change every now and then, and that at the time hit me, and of course they've come to me and made a bit of a lure for me to go, and so I made the effort. It was tough at the time. I think I stood out for about 6 or 8 games. And the Swans couldn't do anything with Carlton in terms of organising me a clearance. And at the same time, I made sure I didn't burn any bridges with Carlton. I mean, I still loved the place because it was giving me so much in those first 5 or 6 years. But and then I made a decision that they wanted me back, so I made a decision I'd go back and eat a bit of humble pie and played a couple of games in the twos and then got back in the seniors.
They made you play in the seconds?
Yeah, made me play, yeah.
And how'd you cope with that?
I was okay, yeah. It was my first game in the seconds, I think, yeah. First games in the seconds. So, but yeah, I could understand it, you know, but I got myself back pretty quickly and played some pretty solid footy after that for a number of years, and my love of Carlton continued to grow after that.
I mentioned before Larrikins and Legends, and it's an amazing revelation. I mean, you blokes were so open to Dan Eddy. Lots of big names through that book. I mean, so many great names that have played for Carlton. Who was the best player you played with?
Look, yeah, look, there were some magnificent players. I mean, Jesselenko was absolutely sensational. You had the likes of Sid Jackson, the excitement machines, and then you had Big John Nichols, who was just a colossus of a footballer and just a brilliant coaching performance in 1972. And then you've got the likes of Bruce Doull. I mean, the Mr. Consistency and Mr. Brilliance at the same time.
You blokes revered Bruce Doull.
Oh, Bruce, yeah. He was just one of those guys that he was. Look, he trained. He never missed training. He just turned up everywhere, and he was just so reliable, and his ability out on the field to his reflexes and his ability to turn defence into attack and all those sorts of things was just very special over an incredible long time. And how lucky was I? I played 250 games behind Bruce basically, and Bruce was in front of me, so made my life a bit easier.
The view of Dooley is that he never opened his mouth, only to eat. That was the only time he opened his mouth. Did you have conversations with him regularly?
Yes, but he was a very introverted. He's still introverted. He was always very quiet. One of the most introverted footballers or persons that I've ever met, but incredibly genuine. And when you had a chat with him, it was all very, very meaningful.
Now, next time you're having lunch with Dooley, will you tell him how enjoyable this is and that I'd love to have him in that seat? If there's two blokes I could get, they'd be Plugger and Bruce Doull.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck with that.
I think you're right. Geoff, you're a star as a player, and I can say this honestly, you're always a gentleman in the entire 14 years that you played at the level. I love watching you play, beautiful footballer, and I think you probably could have won 3 or 4 premierships, but you've got the 2 and no one can take those off you. Great to see you.
Thanks very much, Mike. Appreciate it.